Before you scroll away, listen carefully, because this may explain the one connection you still cannot shake. Not the one that was easy, not the one that looked perfect from the outside, not the one that fit neatly into your life. I mean the one that changed something deep inside you and never truly gave it back. Some people enter your life and only leave a memory, but some arrive like a turning point. They touch a part of you that had been asleep for a long time, and after that, nothing feels completely ordinary again. You can call it timing, you can call it fate, you can call it a lesson. But whatever name you choose, your heart already knows this was never small. And if you have been trying to move on while something inside you keeps looking back, stay here, because this is where it starts to make sense. There are moments in life when a person appears, and the idea of random chance suddenly feels too weak to explain it. You try to look back and connect everything in a logical way. You try to make the story neat and simple so your mind can relax. But deep down, you already know logic was never fully leading this one. This person did not just step into your world. It felt like they came with meaning. It felt like they came with weight. It felt like they carried a purpose that your mind may still be trying to understand. When they entered your life, something shifted inside you quietly, but deeply, in a way that stayed with you. It did not need drama to be powerful. It did not need big events or perfect words. It was something you felt in your body, in your thoughts, in the way your inner world started to change after meeting them. And even now, when you try to tell yourself it is over or finished, there is still something pulling your attention back. Not panic, not obsession. Something quieter, something familiar, something steady. It keeps bringing your focus back, not because you are weak, but because a part of you recognizes that something real was touched. Something that ordinary experiences do not usually reach. Important moments in life do not always arrive when things are easy. Sometimes they arrive when a person is finally ready to notice them. And maybe that is why this message finds you now. Maybe something in you is starting to wake up and see more clearly. There is a quiet knowing inside you that does not fully disappear, no matter how much you try to think your way out of it. And that matters, because passing feelings fade. Illusions break apart over time. But what is real has a strange way of returning again and again, until it is understood in a deeper way. If this feels familiar, then keep listening, because what comes next may explain why this connection still lives inside you. At times, you may feel split inside. One part of you wants to let go, move forward, protect your peace, and not look back again. But another part of you cannot deny what you felt, what was awakened, and what still feels unfinished. You move through your days trying to appear normal, while inside you carry a question that your mind cannot fully settle. You may even wonder if you imagined the depth of it, or if you gave meaning to something that was never truly there. But here is something important to understand. If it were only imagination, time would have softened it by now. Distance would have made it fade. Silence would have ended it. Yet something still remains. And not only remains, but sometimes becomes stronger in quiet and unexpected ways. That is what makes it so difficult to ignore. This connection did not stay alive because your mind wanted a story. It stayed because it touched something deeper in you that recognizes truth before words can explain it. And that kind of truth is not loud. It does not force itself. It does not rush. It simply exists. It shows up in still moments. It appears in dreams. It rises in sudden emotion. It comes as a memory that lands in your chest before your thoughts can explain it. Some connections are not here just to entertain you or pass through your life. They are here to change something within you. They open inner doors that do not easily close again. And once something like that opens, life does not feel exactly the same as before. This is why what you feel is not just simple craving or temporary attachment. Those things are usually noisy. They demand answers quickly. They push for closure. But what you are feeling is often quieter. It stays in the background. It shows up when life becomes still enough for you to hear yourself again. That kind of feeling often comes from a bond that touched your deeper self, not just surface desire. And something many people misunderstand is this: silence from the other person does not always mean the feeling is gone. Sometimes silence means the feeling is too strong to handle. Some people feel deeply, but do not know how to hold that depth. So they pull away, not because they feel nothing, but because they feel too much and cannot stay steady in it. Distance is not always a lack of care. Sometimes it is fear. Fear of being seen too clearly, fear of becoming emotionally exposed, fear of losing control over feelings they were not prepared for. This is often where strong connections become complicated. One person becomes more aware faster. One person is ready to face the truth sooner. The other person feels overwhelmed and steps back. You may have become that mirror for them. You may have reflected something in them they usually keep hidden. And once that happens, it does not simply disappear just because they avoid it. When something real is awakened inside a person, it continues working quietly under the surface. It moves slowly, but it does not fully stop. And what they have not faced within themselves can still influence their choices without them realizing it. People may call it bad timing, confusion, mixed signals, or destiny. But often, it is unresolved fear expressing itself in different forms. A person can care deeply and still run from what that care requires. They can feel something true and still delay it because they are not ready to live with that level of emotional openness. But once something inside them has truly been awakened, it does not simply return to sleep. Something in them remembers. Something in them stays aware. You may have entered their life at a moment that showed them what emotional honesty feels like again. You may have reached a part of them that had been quiet for a long time. And once that part is touched, it does not forget easily. Real encounters are not wasted. If a connection was truly meaningless, it would end cleanly and disappear without echo. But some connections do not end in a clean line. They leave traces. They leave feelings that return in unexpected moments. That does not mean you are meant to force anything or chase something that is not ready. It simply means something may still be unfolding in ways you cannot fully see yet. There is a difference between forcing a closed door and waiting for a door that opens at the right time. Many people rush this part. They believe hope is weakness. But steady hope is not weakness. Sometimes it is simply quiet intuition that has not yet become clarity. And if thinking about this brings you a strange sense of calm instead of panic, pay attention to that. Calm often appears when something inside you recognizes truth, even before your mind fully understands it. At the same time, this path is not asking you to stay stuck. It is asking you to grow. Since this connection entered your life, you may have noticed you are not the same as before. Things that once felt acceptable now feel empty. Attention that is shallow no longer satisfies you. Mixed energy that you once tolerated now feels tiring. That shift is important. Sometimes a connection does not arrive to stay immediately. Sometimes it arrives to wake something in you, to show you what you are capable of feeling, to reveal what no longer fits who you are becoming. And that is why letting go feels complicated. Sometimes you are not only releasing a person, you are also releasing the version of yourself that existed during that experience. You are trying to understand who you have become through it. Through this bond, you learned how deeply you can feel. You learned that your heart can hold presence, depth, and sincerity. You learned that intensity is not always the same as truth, and truth is not always loud or obvious. And once you see that clearly, you cannot easily return to pretending that less is enough. The real shift happens when you stop asking why this is happening to you and start asking what this is teaching you about yourself. That is when confusion begins turning into understanding. That is when pain slowly becomes awareness. And that is when the connection is no longer only about the other person, but also about your own growth and direction. From that point, the story does not simply end. It changes shape. Even if nothing changes on the outside yet, the inner experience already begins to move differently. These kinds of connections rarely move in straight lines. They return in cycles. They bring the same themes again, but each time they ask for more honesty, more awareness, and more emotional maturity. What often makes it painful is not only lack of feeling, it is timing. One person may be ready to open fully, while the other is still working through old fears and protective habits. That is why some connections do not disappear quickly. They sit quietly under the surface of life. They appear again when distractions fade, when things become still, and when the mind can no longer avoid what the heart already knows. At times, you may become the quiet reference point in their mind, even if they never express it. And maybe that is why certain signs or reminders feel stronger lately. Not to trap you in longing, but to keep you steady while you learn the difference between attachment and alignment. Attachment says, you need this person to be okay. Alignment says, you are already becoming whole, and what belongs in your life will meet you there naturally. That difference changes everything. The moment you stop chasing emotional certainty and start living with your own clarity, something shifts. The pressure inside begins to ease. The connection is no longer driven by fear. It starts to feel different. And yes, that change can be felt. When your energy is no longer scattered in waiting, when you are no longer reaching from anxiety and instead standing in your own stability, that presence speaks without words. It creates honesty in reality. Either the connection grows into something real and clear, or it reveals its limits honestly. Either way, something becomes clear, and clarity brings freedom. This is often the moment where old patterns begin to break. The cycle of one person chasing while the other withdraws starts to weaken. Because when you choose growth, you stop feeding confusion. You stop calling uncertainty love. You stop mistaking silence for depth. You begin to want something more real, more grounded, more honest. And that inner change sends a message without words. It says that if something is real, it must exist in reality, not only in emotion or imagination. It must come with honesty, intention, and accountability. That message alone can affect the other person more deeply than chasing ever could. Because when you stop bending yourself just to keep a connection alive, the other person is finally left alone with their real feelings. No more pressure, no more emotional carrying from your side, just truth sitting in the open. And that moment can change everything. It becomes a turning point. The fear of losing you completely can start to feel stronger than the comfort of staying the same. But this is where something important must be understood clearly. Your task is not to wait in emotional suspension, hoping someone else becomes ready. Your task is to stay grounded in self-respect, while life shows you what is real. Real love is not something that only exists in private feelings. It has to be lived in action, in clarity, and in consistency. If someone returns, let it be because they can meet you fully and openly, not because they miss your presence while refusing to change. And if they do not return, that truth must also be accepted without twisting it into hope. Because a truth that hurts is still kinder than a hope that keeps making you smaller. You are being shaped for something deeper, not fantasy. For clarity, not confusion. For a kind of love that can exist in real life, not just in memory, imagination, or emotion. As this understanding grows, something begins to shift inside you. Thoughts of that person may still come, but they feel different now. There is more calm in them, less panic, less reaching, more observation, more acceptance. That is not indifference, that is growth. It shows that the connection is no longer controlling you in the same way. Instead, it is teaching you something. And when one part of a deep emotional bond changes like that, the entire dynamic naturally shifts. Energy always moves toward balance. If you stop chasing, something changes. If you stop asking life for constant answers and start living as if you are already grounded, the direction of the experience changes. They may begin to feel your absence in a new way, not as punishment, not as rejection, but as a quiet space where emotional effort used to be. And that can be uncomfortable for them, because now they are left with themselves, their own thoughts, their own patterns, their own avoidance. The things they used to distract themselves from are no longer being softened by your presence. This is where people are often forced to see what they have been avoiding. The walls they built for protection, the habits they used to avoid vulnerability, the control they thought was strength. Those patterns may have helped them survive before, but they also kept them distant from the kind of love they actually want. If they want to move forward, they will have to face vulnerability. They will have to stop hiding behind confusion, distance, or old pain. That is not a small step. It requires courage, and many people only find that courage when they feel they might lose something meaningful. But your role is not to rescue that process. Your role is to stay aligned with yourself so deeply that whatever happens next becomes clear without forcing it. Whether this leads to reunion or to release, it should no longer break you apart inside. That is one of the strongest signs that you are healing. You can care about someone and still remain whole. You can feel love and still choose truth. You can hope without abandoning yourself. Sometimes there is still unfinished meaning between two people, but that does not always mean a shared future. Sometimes it simply means something honest still needs to be understood. Unspoken feelings do not disappear just because time passes. They stay. They build weight. They create pressure. Eventually, they ask for clarity. That clarity may come through a conversation. It may come through distance. It may come through acceptance. But it always asks for honesty from both sides. And in that process, fear shows up. Your fear may ask if you can trust what you feel without constant proof. Their fear may ask if they can open their heart without falling back into old defense patterns. These are deep, emotional questions, and they do not resolve instantly. They unfold slowly over time. You may notice something subtle happening. The idea of reunion no longer feels chaotic or desperate. It feels quieter, more grounded, more realistic. You are not chasing a fantasy anymore. You are asking for something stable, something mutual, something that can actually exist in real life. That shift changes what you accept and what you walk away from. Real connection is not meant to trap you in confusion. It is meant to bring you closer to yourself, not further away. If communication opens again, let it unfold naturally. Do not rush to fill silence. Do not try to force outcomes. Let actions speak more than words. Let consistency matter more than emotion in the moment. Time will reveal whether this is emotional memory, unfinished lessons, or something real that can be built properly. And if fear rises again, do not let it lead you. Fear is often just an echo of old experiences. It is not always truth. It is not always guidance. It is just noise from what you once went through. Pay attention to your body too. The body often understands before the mind accepts. When something is not right, you feel tightness, you feel tension, you overthink, you shrink. But when something is aligned, even if it is uncertain, there is usually more space inside you. More breath, more calm, more presence. That difference matters, because what comes next will require discernment, not desperation. You will need to see the difference between intensity and compatibility, between longing and real alignment, between emotional pull and actual safety. Slowly, a quiet strength builds in you. You stop needing constant reassurance. You stop searching for signs all the time. You stop trying to get others to confirm what you already sense inside. Something settles. Not because you know the ending, but because you know yourself better than before. And that changes how you move through life completely. You no longer need to over-explain your feelings to people who cannot understand them. You no longer need to lower your standards just to keep emotional access to someone. Real love does not ask you to stay confused to prove its value. It may challenge you, yes. It may change you, yes. But it does not require self-betrayal. If this connection is meant to grow, it must grow in truth. And if it cannot grow in truth, then truth itself will eventually release you from what was never meant to continue. The space your emotional effort used to fill is changing now. When your energy becomes less anxious and less tangled, the connection itself starts to show its real form. They may begin to feel your absence differently, not as punishment, but as the absence of effort they relied on without noticing. That can bring hidden emotions to the surface. Because now there is nowhere easy to hide. The reality of choice becomes clearer. The cost of avoidance becomes clearer. The possibility of loss becomes clearer. This is where people often face themselves honestly for the first time. Some respond by growing. Some withdraw further. But both responses reveal truth. And truth is what matters most now, even more than comfort. You have already spent enough time trying to turn confusion into meaning. Now you are being asked to live from a calmer place. A place where you are honest, open, but not unguarded. Loving, but not self-sacrificing. That is a more mature way of loving. If they come forward, let it be complete. Let words match actions. Let consistency prove intention. And if they cannot offer that, do not confuse absence of clarity with something spiritual or meaningful. Sometimes the lesson is simply seeing clearly. Seeing clearly is also healing, even when it is painful. What is unfolding now should not be rushed. Slow movement does not mean nothing is happening. Sometimes it means something is forming beneath the surface that would not survive if it came too early. If this person returns, it should not be the same cycle repeated. It should come with honesty, change, and real effort. And if it does not, then trust that your growth was never wasted. You are not meant to return to a smaller version of love than the one you have already outgrown. You are being guided towards something more stable, more mutual, and more real. Something that does not require constant guessing. And even if nothing external changes, you still gain something powerful. You gain yourself back. And that changes everything that comes after. So stay steady. Let things become clear in their own time. Do not force what is not ready. Do not run from what is real either. Just stay grounded enough to recognize truth when it appears, because what belongs in your life will never require you to become less than who you are.